Welcome back to the show, everybody. Well, back in 2019, our next guest wrote an article in Buzzfeed that went mega viral. It was about millennial burnout, and over 7 million people read about this and said, you know what? She's finally putting a name to this generational struggle. Well, that article went on to become a book, and that book is entitled Can't Even How Millennials Became the Burnout Generation. And Helen Petersen joins us today to talk about this and so much more. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
All right, and let's start with this. We know millennial falls into 20s, 30s, but we also know about the term burnout. It's not a new term, but the two are closely related. Why do you say that burnout is a millennial condition?
With millennials, we just have a lot of different conditions that intersect that kind of prepare us for deep burnout. And one of them is that most of us graduated either from high school or from college directly into the Great Recession or its aftermath, and have really struggled to find a foothold as any form of stability, and have only really achieved it in the last couple of years before COVID hit. A lot of millennials, both in the US and in Canada, have a significant amount of student debt from undergrad or graduate school. And then there's our really complex relationship with digital technologies. You know, everyone of all generations are using these devices, but I think our formative selves, our understanding of how we spend our time, how we represent ourselves, is so intertwined with those social media and phones, all computers, that sort of thing.
So, oftentimes when people hear the term burnout, they might think of something that's perhaps more clinical or more mental in nature. But it sounds like what you're saying, it sort of goes beyond that to a deeper exhaustion, maybe even a physical exhaustion where you're hitting a wall and that's that. So what does burnout mean to you in that context beyond just maybe what clinically people might think is happening?
Yeah, I think that I didn't recognize my own burnout because I thought that it was that, clinical diagnosis. People who are working in war zones, or people who are, physicians who work so hard and then really just cannot continue. And so when I was feeling like my life was just an endless to-do list and that I couldn't get even basic things done on that to-do list, I didn't recognize, like, oh, maybe this has something to do that I have, engineered myself to be working all the time and to feel really bad if I'm not working, and to struggle to find leisure time or to cultivate hobbies or anything that provides the sort of rest that humans just need. We're not work robots.
When you hear the term millennial, I've heard it all the time. We're entitled, we're lazy, we don't care, we don't work hard. But then you kind of stack up our generation against another generation, won't call any names, and you can see that we've taken a huge financial step back when it comes to our financial literacy and stability. What is the reason for that, and why do we get this stigma around millennials when it comes to our work ethic and our mentality?
Millennials are the first generation since World War II to take a step backwards in terms of financial milestones, savings, all of the things that we think about when we think about, successful adulthood in some capacity. And the big problem, I think, is that a lot of the things that millennials do as work, whether that is, it involves being on Twitter a lot, or being a social media manager, or, just even checking emails on your phone, it is not always recognizable as hard work, even though it is hard work, hard, exhausting work. But I think that's where a lot of that stereotype of laziness or indulgent or any of those things came from, when in reality, I think the millennials I know, I don't know a single lazy millennial. Every millennial I know is hustling.
You also write about parenting styles and how perhaps the parents of millennials, maybe in their parenting style, may have contributed to this burnout later in life that some millennials are experiencing. How so?
Yeah, so the thing about boomers and old Gen Xers that's really interesting is that they entered into adulthood during another period of instability. There's kind of these rolling recessions through the 70s and early 80s. And so a lot of their parenting strategies that they adopted were trying to shore up some sort of stability, some sort of middle class continuance for their kids. And that had a lot to do with, focusing on getting into college. There was this idea that college at any cost, the best college, that would put you in solid footing. And I think to some extent that's true, but also it puts you into a lot of debt, or there are some careers that don't need the sort of college degrees that we are receiving. And just that idea of cultivating kind of mini adults who every activity needs to be positioned as something that could be on the resume. Like you have to be the best at a sport or playing a musical instrument. You can't just play, you have to have a play date. Like there has to be this utilitarian quality to all of your childhood activities. That has really, I think, influenced how millennials think about their own leisure and their own education. And it's trickling down in the way that they are parenting their children as well.
When I think of my millennial friends, myself included, a lot of people would label themselves as creative. So the goal for their dream job is usually something that they're incredibly passionate about. But then you have this coupling of a mindset where you're always working. You're not off the clock. You're continuously grinding. Why is that pairing so dangerous?
I think that we have this idea that any sort of rest is somehow bad, right? That like it's a marker of not working as hard as your peers when it's in fact essential. And so because we're always trying to be productive in some way with any of our time off, oh, I'm going on a walk, I should listen to a podcast, that it makes it so that we never have that form of rest, and we also never feel comfortable actually cultivating a hobby or a side, something that we do that is not work, if we can't monetize it in some way.
Now, quickly, you talked to 10,000 millennials, and when it came to honing in on where that rage war was, a lot of it was from millennial moms. What's the tea?
Oh my gosh. So I just, like the chapter that's on parenting, the rage just emanates from the page. I think moms are just incredibly frustrated with what it's like to be a mom in the world today, especially like in North America. And the problem is that so much of our society is still set up to cater as if all families still have someone in the home, someone who can pick up kind of like those in-between times, someone who is doing the housework and doing all of those things. That's just not the case. And so a lot of the work in filling the gaps, right? Filling that gap between the lived experience and what is expected of moms and of parents just generally, that falls on the women.
So, Anne, with the rise of burnout, there's a lot of millennials who might be saying, you know what, how can I fix myself? How do I fix this? And you're saying that's the wrong question to ask. So what is the right question?
All of the fixes that we can implement in our own lives, they're just Band-Aids, right? Even in your workplace, that can be really helpful, things to alleviate burnout, but it's still a Band-Aid. The fix has to come on the societal level. It has to come in the form of things that make it easier for moms to try to juggle everything that is the task of motherhood and everything that is a task in the workplace. But it also just has to come in the form of re-knitting that social safety net in a way that people can feel like they have stability in their everyday lives and don't have to be working all the time.
And we want to thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
All right, the book is called Can't Even, and it is available everywhere right now. We'll be back right after this.